a slow-burn psychological horror story about a weekend getaway at a remote cabin that turns into a nightmare when strange phenomena begin to occur. Follow the protagonist's descent into terror as they confront an ancient evil lurking in the surrounding woods, challenging their perception of reality and testing their will to survive. Horror story, scary cabin, cabin in the woods, disturbing stories, hellscape cabin, horror narration, creepypasta, psychological horror, forest horror, supernatural thriller, asthma horror, horror asthma, sleep story, nightmare fuel, scary tales, ghost story, woods horror, terrifying cabin, horror fiction, haunted cabin. The scratching at my window came at exactly 3:17 a.m. I know because I was staring at the digital clock, unable to sleep in this unfamiliar cabin. Tap, tap, scratch, like fingernails on glass. I told myself it was just tree branches, but there were no trees close enough to touch the building. Then came the whisper, so faint I almost convinced myself I'd imagined it. A voice calling my name from the darkness outside. I'd always been a city person, but when my friend Jake inherited this cabin from his eccentric uncle and invited our group for a weekend getaway, I agreed. Total digital detox, he'd promised. Just pristine wilderness, a crystal clear lake, and absolute isolation. Those words echoed mockingly in my head now, as I lay paralyzed in bed, listening to something that shouldn't be there, scratching to get in. The cabin itself was beautiful in daylight. Rustic pine interior, stone fireplace, windows overlooking dense forest that stretched for miles. But at night, those same windows turned into black mirrors, reflecting our movements while concealing whatever might be watching from outside. The isolation that had seemed so appealing during planning now felt suffocating. The nearest neighbor was 5 miles away, and with no cell service, we were completely cut off. We'd arrived yesterday afternoon. Myself, Jake, his girlfriend Mia, and our friends Connor and Elise. Everything seemed normal at first. We unpacked, explored the property, and Jake showed us the oddities his uncle had collected. Strange carvings, antique hunting equipment, and a locked chest he couldn't open. Uncle Frank was into some weird stuff, he'd joked, pointing to symbols carved into the wooden beams overhead. Local legends and folklore. He was obsessed with the history of these woods. During dinner, Jake told us that, according to his uncle, the land had once belonged to a religious commune that disappeared mysteriously in the 1800s. They practiced some kind of nature worship, he explained. Uncle Frank had journals documenting their rituals, said they believed they could communicate with forest spirits. We'd laughed it off, the kind of creepy story perfect for a cabin trip, and opened another bottle of wine. But now, in the darkness, those stories didn't seem so amusing. The scratching had stopped, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I reached for my phone to check the time again, 3:23 a.m., when I noticed something odd. The shadows in my room seemed wrong, too dense in the corner near my door, almost as if the darkness there was thicker, more substantial. I blinked hard, and for just a moment, I could swear the shadow moved independently from any object that could cast it. I told myself I was being paranoid. Too many horror movies, too much wine with dinner, and Jake's stories about the commune. A toxic combination for an overactive imagination. I closed my eyes and focused on my breathing. In, out, in, out. When I opened them again, the shadow was gone, and I almost laughed at myself for being so childish. Then I heard Elise scream from the room down the hall. I bolted upright, fumbling for the lamp on the bedside table. My fingers found the switch, but nothing happened when I flicked it. The power was out, heart pounding. I grabbed my phone for light and swung my legs over the side of the bed. That's when I felt it. Something cold and wet beneath my bare feet, soaking into the wooden floorboards. In the blue glow of my phone, I saw dark liquid spreading across the floor, seeping from under the door. Connor reached Elise's room first. When I got there, they were both pale, Connor holding a trembling Elise as she pointed wordlessly to her window. There was a face, she whispered, pressed against the glass, but wrong, like it was melting. Jake and Mia arrived moments later, and we searched outside with flashlights, finding nothing but disturbed underbrush, as though something had moved quickly away from the cabin. Probably just a deer, Jake said unconvincingly. They get curious sometimes. No one mentioned the liquid I'd found in my room, which had mysteriously vanished by the time we returned. I didn't bring it up either, suddenly unsure if I'd imagined it. We agreed to stay together in the living room until morning, stoking the fireplace for both light and comfort. None of us wanted to be alone in our rooms again. As dawn approached, exhaustion finally overcame fear, and we drifted into uneasy sleep. I woke to pale sunlight and the smell of coffee. In daylight, our fears seemed foolish. Elise suggested what she'd seen was probably just her own reflection, distorted by the old glass. The explanation was reasonable, and we all latched onto it, eager to salvage our weekend. Jake proposed a hike to the lake to clear our heads, and everyone agreed enthusiastically. Too enthusiastically, perhaps, as if we were all overcompensating, trying to convince ourselves that nothing strange had happened. The forest was beautiful in the morning light, dappled sunshine filtering through the canopy. Birds sang, squirrels darted between trees. Everything seemed normal until we reached the lake. It was as pristine as Jake had described, an azure gem nestled among the pines. But at the water's edge, we found something disturbing. 7 stones arranged in a perfect circle, with strange symbols carved into them that matched those on the beams in the cabin. At the center of the circle lay a small animal, a rabbit, splayed open with surgical precision. This wasn't here yesterday, Jake whispered, face pale. I walked the entire shoreline when we arrived. Connor suggested local kids playing pranks, but the explanation rang hollow. We were miles from anywhere, and the precision of the tableau suggested something more deliberate than teenage mischief. Mia wanted to leave immediately, and honestly, so did I. But Jake reminded us that we'd driven over 3 hours to get here, and it would be nearly dark again by the time we made it back to the city. One more night, he pleaded. We'll stick together, keep the lights on, and leave first thing tomorrow. Reluctantly, we agreed. But as we hiked back to the cabin, I couldn't shake the feeling we were being watched. The forest that had seemed so welcoming just hours before now felt oppressive. The trees too dense, the shadows too deep. Several times, I caught movement in my peripheral vision, only to find nothing when I turned to look. Back at the cabin, we tried to salvage the day with board games and drinks, but conversation was strained. Every unexpected sound made us jump. As the sun began to set, Jake decided to check the circuit breaker to ensure we wouldn't lose power again. I offered to help, not wanting anyone to be alone. The breaker box was in a small shed behind the cabin. As Jake fiddled with the switches, I noticed something carved into the inside of the door. The same symbols we'd seen on the stones and beams. Beneath them, in faded ink, someone had written, "They are always watching. They are hungry. Do not acknowledge them." Before I could point it out to Jake, the lights flickered on. "Fixed it," he declared triumphantly. "Probably just a loose connection." I hesitated, then decided against mentioning the writing. Everyone was already on edge, and it was likely just more of Jake's uncle's folklore obsession. That night, we barricaded ourselves in the living room, keeping every light blazing. We took shifts staying awake, though I doubt anyone really slept. My watch came at 3 a.m., and I sat by the window, staring into the darkness, jumping at every rustle from the surrounding forest. At exactly 3:17, the power went out again. I fumbled for my phone, activating the flashlight function with trembling fingers. The beam caught something outside the window, just for a second. A pale face with hollow eyes, mouth stretched impossibly wide. I recoiled, dropping my phone, the light spinning wildly across the floor before going out. "Guys, wake up," I hissed, shaking the nearest person. "Connor, there's something outside." As everyone stirred, we heard it. A slow, deliberate knock on the front door. 3 times. Pause. 3 more. No one moved. "Maybe it's a ranger," Mia whispered hopefully. "They might have seen our lights and come to check." The knock came again. 3 precise raps. "At 3 a.m.?" Elise countered. "And we're miles from any ranger station." Jake took a tentative step toward the door, but I grabbed his arm. "Don't," I warned. Something deep inside me knew opening that door would be catastrophic. The knocking stopped. For several long seconds, silence hung heavy in the air. Then came a new sound. Scratching, not just at the door, but all around us. Windows, walls, even the roof. As if dozens of hands were trying to claw their way in simultaneously. Between the scratches, we could hear whispering, unintelligible words in a language none of us recognized. The voices seemed to be coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. Connor managed to get his phone light working, and we huddled together in its meager glow, watching in horror as the shadows around us seemed to pulse and writhe with a life of their own. Then the scratching stopped as suddenly as it had begun. In the silence that followed, we heard heavy footsteps circling the cabin. Something large was out there, moving with purpose. It paused outside each window in turn, as if inspecting us. When it reached the living room window, we saw it, a silhouette darker than the night itself, tall and misshapen, with limbs that seemed too long, too jointed. It stood motionless, watching. Though it had no discernible face, I felt its attention focused on me specifically, as if it had been waiting for me all along. A moment later, it was gone, melting into the darkness like smoke. The lights flickered back on, as if nothing had happened. None of us slept after that. We sat in tense silence until dawn broke. then packed our things with frantic efficiency. No one spoke about what we'd seen. It was as if acknowledging it would somehow make it more real. As we loaded the cars, I noticed Jake lingering on the porch, staring into the forest with an odd expression. "Jake," I called, "we need to go." He turned slowly, and I felt a chill run down my spine. His face was the same, but his eyes seemed different, darker, emptier. "I think I should stay," he said, his voice flat. "Uncle Frank left me this place for a reason. I need to understand why." Connor and I exchanged glances, then each took one of Jake's arms, guiding him firmly to the car despite his protests. As we drove away, I watched the cabin recede in the side mirror until the trees swallowed it from view. We thought that was the end of it. We were wrong. The nightmares started the first night back in my apartment. Vivid dreams of running through endless forest, pursued by shadows that whispered my name. I'd wake gasping, sheets soaked with sweat, the taste of dirt in my mouth. Sometimes I'd find pine needles in my bed, though I live on the 15th floor, in the middle of the city. The others reported similar experiences. Elise began sleepwalking. Connor developed an irrational fear of the dark. Mia stopped answering our calls altogether. And Jake disappeared 3 days after our return. His apartment was found empty, the walls covered with the symbols we'd seen at the cabin, scrawled in what the police later confirmed was his own blood. I tried to tell the authorities about the cabin, but my story sounded deranged, even to my own ears. They investigated, of course, but found nothing unusual. Just an empty cabin in the woods. No strange symbols. No evidence of anything we'd experienced. But I know what we saw. I know what's out there, waiting in those woods. And I know it's not finished with us. Last night, I woke at exactly 3:17 a.m. to the sound of scratching at my window, 15 floors above street level. When I forced myself to look, I saw a handprint forming in the condensation on the glass, the fingers impossibly long and jointed, and behind it, in the darkness beyond, a familiar silhouette watched me with invisible eyes. The worst part? For just a moment, I felt an overwhelming urge to open the window and let it in. Sometimes, I think I still might, because each night the scratching gets louder, the whispers more insistent, and each morning I find more pine needles in my bed, along with dirt under my fingernails, as if I've been digging in my sleep. Yesterday, I discovered the symbols from the cabin carved into my bathroom door. I don't remember putting them there. Last night, I called Connor in a panic after finding a small circle of stones arranged on my kitchen floor. He didn't sound like himself. His voice was flat, emotionless. "You should go back to the cabin," he said. "We all should. They're waiting for us." He hung up before I could respond. When I tried calling back, the number was disconnected. I don't know how much longer I can resist. The whispers are getting clearer now, and what they're saying makes a terrible kind of sense. They're promising answers, promising peace if I just return to the woods, to the circle by the lake. The scratching at my window has started again. It's 3:17 a.m., but this time I think I'll open it. This time I'll let them in, because I'm beginning to understand what Jake's uncle knew, what the commune discovered all those years ago. The forest has been calling me home all along, and I'm finally ready to answer. I can see my reflection in the glass, as I approach the window, but my face isn't quite right anymore. My smile is too wide, my eyes too dark, my fingers, reaching for the latch, seem longer than they should be, with too many joints. Behind me, my phone lights up with a text from an unknown number. We're waiting for you at the cabin. All of us, even Jake. As I unlock the window, I feel a strange peace washing over me. The scratching has stopped. The whispering has stopped. There's only silence now, and the dark promise of the forest calling me home. I open the window, and the night air rushes in, carrying the impossible scent of pine needles and damp earth. 15 stories above the city streets, something reaches for me from the darkness, and I reach back. The cabin is waiting. It has always been waiting, and now I understand why. Do you hear that scratching at your window? It might be me. Don't be afraid to let me in. After all, the forest is calling you, too. Can't you hear it? Hear it?